Hi everyone, I'm Juji and I'm here with Shira, Terrace, Kim, and Lee. We are five friends, speakers, and professionals from different cultures, backgrounds, and age groups coming together to offer healing and inspiration. We want you, our audience, to get to know each of us a little better through our struggles, triumphs, and the lessons we've learned along the way. Today, we'll hear Lee's story, which started in a country 6,000 miles away. She persevered through many struggles, both emotional and physical, and has many powerful lessons to share. So Lee, I know that we both immigrated at a very young age and are first generation Americans. So we were talking a little bit about culture shock and what it was like to first enter the US and start going to school here. What was that like as a child?
Yeah, definitely a culture shock making the move. I'll first give you a little bit of background of how it was like for me in Israel.
Mm.
And in Israel, between age 0 and 7, that's when we moved to the United States, I had the best life that I ever knew. I was surrounded by about 40 cousins. Both my parents come from very large families, 9 siblings and 5 siblings. And my parents were each the youngest in their families. Anyway, lots and lots of cousins and get-togethers and family affairs. And life was very butterfly and rainbows. And so the culture shock of moving to the United States was huge. It was cold. I'm not sure what time of year we moved, but I think it was the fall, maybe, or just before school started. I remember it being cold and kind of lonely for me. I didn't have all of my cousins who were my friends. They were my playmates. It was just very different. I didn't know the language. And, all of these things, along with my parents really being very gung-ho about living the American dream, land of opportunity. They were out working and busy. So I kind of felt, in a way, in a sense, at that point that I was kind of fending for myself in life with my emotions especially.
Can I ask you, Lee, like, why did your parents move here? Like, all of a sudden, like, you have this huge family there, and they're like, let's take our little kids and go 6,000 miles away.
Let's go be successful in America.
Oh, so
land of opportunity, bigger, better things. It was very, I'm sure, exciting for them. They were young. Now, my mom was 19 when she had me, so she was 26. My dad was probably 6-7 years older than that, but they were young and they wanted the American dream. And being the youngest of their own siblings, I think, had something to do with that too. They were a little bit more, independent perhaps, and daring. Yeah.
Wow. So what was school like? I mean, I remember, it taking me a long time to really start making friends that stuck.
Well, yeah, school was okay. I just remember making the transition was a little tough for me because when we first see my parents, so they were first generation, obviously, here in the United States. I remember my first day in school was very embarrassing for me. Again, I did not speak English. I was going into 2nd grade and I was enrolled in a private school, which, it was necessary to wear a uniform, a skirt and a particular shirt. I didn't have any of that. I don't know that my parents looked into exactly what I needed. Actually, it wasn't a uniform per se, but there was a dress code. I'll put it that way. There was a dress code. I went to school in my pants and sneakers and whatnot, and I was the only girl in pants.
Oh my God.
It was,
Did
I don't know, as an adult,
do they have to, like, call your mom and say your kid's not dressed proper? Like, what happened?
I don't think anybody called, but I think what I remember is just kind of being looked at. I felt smaller than small. I felt humiliated. I felt, and I don't know that anybody really cared or gave a shit, but for me, it was like, oh my God, I am new here. I don't speak the language, and I'm not already fitting in, even with the way that I'm dressed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I gave it to my parents, but good, when I got home.
At how old were you? At 8
7.
years old?
7. Oh my
7.
God.
7. And so at school was fine. I went to the school for a bunch of years. Then I started high school in a public high school, and I didn't want to continue with any kind of private school. And then my parents decided to move again after my first year of high school. So high school was a brand new area, brand new kids, brand new crowd. And then moving into the suburbs when I was 14, going into sophomore year of high school, was a whole nother culture shock. This was more about wealth and everybody comparing what they have, what they're wearing. But, you know, I transitioned into it. I made my friends, and things became fine. But it's just really all those years of being away from what I left behind didn't go away from me. That always was something that I held on to for dear life. Like, I don't have what I had, you know. I lived in a mind of scarcity, and very much a victim. Very much a victim. And to a degree, maybe I was, but I was always like, I don't have my family, and I don't have my cousins anymore, and it's cold here. And I felt abandoned.
Taris, were you going to say something? I hope we can hear you. Can we hear you?
Hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, Taris, you got a
Okay.
question.
How was the relationship with your parents?
The relationship was good. They just weren't around much.
So
You
did
know,
you
my
nurture? Did you feel like they took care of you, or did you
they
take care of
always
yourself?
they always took very good care of us, but when it came to the emotional part, for me, that was missing. I was missing someone who, you know, was a little more engaged in my school activities, or what my teachers were about, or what I was doing for homework. My parents were very, very busy, and really only until years later did I understand that they were working their asses off and doing their best, with every intention to do it for us, for the kids. You know, I have 2 siblings, but as a young child, it felt like abandonment. We were always well cared for. We had help at home. We had a beautiful home. We had help. We had live-ins for many, many years. So we lived well, but I always had that missing slice of my pie of like, I wish my mom could take me to school one day. I wish, you know, my mom could read me a book one day, and things like that. Yeah. So that was missing. They definitely made sure that there were people there, and we were very well taken care of.
Right. But it was like abandonment from your own parents in a way.
In my own perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's what I needed. And you know, later I always, you know, when you get older and start to discover what your thoughts from before really might mean, and you start to explore that, I wondered if I was too needy. You know?
And it's possible, right? That's what God put into the world for you, a needy child, maybe.
I think it sounds more like that's what you made it mean. Like that's what you made your loneliness and abandonment mean, was that maybe like you kind of turned it onto yourself. I'm just curiously, how did feeling lonely, not speaking the language, not being dressed appropriately, being brought over from this from a totally different country, and like plopped here in all of this newness and change, like I just want you to paint a fuller picture for us so we can understand, like, how did that impact you? Like from 7 on, like, how did that impact you mentally, physically, emotionally?
It drove me. it drove me to, and it actually motivated me, and it drove me to be the best that I can be. And almost to a fault, like, I need to speak the language, but I need to speak it the best. And and I'm now dual languages, but growing up in private school, I spoke both languages. So I was the best in my native language, but I became the best in English as well. So by fourth grade, after a couple of years of being here, I remember the American kids were copying off of my spelling bee test and things like that, because I was going to prove that I can do it. God damn it. Like if it killed me, it drove me to never be in that situation where I am not knowing what to do or what to say or how to be.
And where you felt unsafe. Is it like almost an unsafe feeling? Like you to not feel it, it like didn't feel safe to you. So to not feel it, it drove you to put all this pressure on yourself to be the best.
I guess I felt maybe that I just wasn't part of, the class or the rest of the students, and I felt lonely. It's lonely when you don't speak the same language as other people. It's lonely when you are of a different culture than other people, and for me, that loneliness really was also because I had that empty, lonely feeling after leaving all of my family behind. So it was, making new friends, and I made new friends, and I had new friends, and that was great. It just didn't fill that void for me for many years until I got over it. At some point, you just, you start to realize, like, this is it, make the best of it. And these are some of the things I started to explore later in life.
Lee, I have a question for you in terms of, because we're hearing themes, there's abandonment, obviously unintentionally by your parents. It's not like, we're going to take our daughter and put her, in another country. But how did the isolation and that fear of abandonment and loneliness, like, how did that sort of parlay into your teenage, young adult, because we all tend to have patterns in life. I'm just curious to see how that played out for you.
In my teen years, I don't know. It may have been something that was instilled in me, like deep down inside. There's nothing obvious that I can really state from my teen years where I felt abandonment. Not really. I'm sure it came up at some point, but not any different than anybody normally would feel. But I did feel it later on again in my marriage. And that, so it showed up again like that clearly. I feel in my marriage. And again, in my perspective, that's how I felt based on what I feel should be the way that a relationship is or goes.
I'm sorry. I know Juji. I know you have a question, Juj, but I just have to add this at this moment. Can you just help me understand what that looks like? Like when you said, "Oh, I experienced this feeling of abandonment in my marriage." Like, what did it feel like? What did it look like? What caused you to feel it? Like, just so that I can understand and we could relate.
So I got married at age 32. I got married and to someone who was working a lot of hours. And that kind of is what identified him, but he worked a lot. And it wasn't just that he wasn't there for many dinners, but after I even had my child, he wasn't there a lot. And I think in that regard, I started to feel abandonment because I felt for many years that I was raising my child on my own, and came to the realization that this is probably also that a form of abandonment for me. That's how it felt. There were many little milestones, I guess, in life or in my marriage. For example, being pregnant, having a child. I remember being in the hospital the night that I gave birth. Right after I gave birth, I went, I was in the hospital, and my husband at the time was there, but then he had to go. It was like I gave birth 2 hours later. He's like, all right, I got to go because I have to get up really early and go to work.
You mean the day of?
Yeah, that same exact night. And it hurt, it really hurt.
Yeah.
And in this way, that abandonment showed up,
Yeah.
Juju, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when there's like these themes that play out, like I heard you say that you felt like you had to prove something at first to your classmates, and then maybe on some level to your parents, that like you could handle whatever it was being thrown at you. But do you feel like you were trying to prove to your husband something at the time, or is proving something a theme that you feel like has also been playing out because of this fear of people leaving or not really fully being present?
Hmm.
I don't feel like I was proving anything in my marriage.
Okay.
What I do believe is that we are responsible for everything that happens in our life, and unfortunately, that's how it is, and it's not an easy thing to swallow sometimes. So, with all the ups and downs I had in my marriage, I don't know that I was trying to prove anything. I mean, I do know that I had a thought that I can change him in some ways. There were many things that were not really aligned with my morals and values when we first got married, and I knew it. But I do believe that all of these things have happened to teach me a lesson, like as we know, I mean, I think a lot of obstacles are placed in our way in our life to teach us lessons. Mm-hmm. And for me, as far as the abandonment, again, I think it all goes to my perspective and how I'm being in this world, how I come across, and working on myself through personal growth for years now, for I would say 21 years, has been something that has started to change my life. Still not without any obstacles, obviously, we'll always have those, but no, I don't think that I was trying to prove anything. And I actually don't even think I was trying to prove anything to the kids when I was younger. I was trying to do it for myself.
Mm.
Lee, what's the lesson? You mentioned you believe that there's a lesson to learn from all this. What is that lesson for you?
Well, I'll tell you one of the lessons, right? There are so many lessons in this, but for me, like, not necessarily proving to anybody else or the students that surrounded me in school, I wanted to be strong, to appear strong, because to me, not being in the know, not being a part of something is kind of weak. I felt left out. I felt, and for many years I was told to be strong. My mother is a huge force of strength. She's got strength on many, many levels, but she also uses words that may not have, I may not have interpreted them the right way for me. And, and she didn't have personal growth workshops and things to learn from for all these years. So she used to tell me to be strong, be strong, be strong. And I thought being strong was looking strong and looking confident all the time. And that's what I strived for, by learning the language quickly, by doing well at everything that I did. And my lesson here, and this was a huge lesson in my life, is that the biggest strength that you can have is being vulnerable. Because I learned that it's okay to be vulnerable and what that means. And that is actually being really strong.
Mm.
It was a huge, huge eye opener for me. It's something I never thought about. Strength took on a whole new meaning.
Wow. T, you had a question?
Oh my God, I have like 4 and I wrote them all down and I don't know what I have no idea what they mean. Sorry.
What's that?
Well, well, wait, did you want to ask something? Because I have something to
I do have one really interesting question. I think it is anyways. When you, you kind of sort of like went down this path or created a story in your head, or this is what, God gave you to try to overcome this abandonment, or I like Juji's words a lot better, not fully, what'd she say? Not fully being present, like other people for you, not that you were abandoned, but that people weren't fully present for you. Right. So did you by any chance have that discussion, how you felt growing up with your family, with your husband? While you guys were dating and stuff, and did he know how you felt about that? And, that maybe that's just what you needed. You needed time, you needed the compassion, you needed someone there.
Well, listen, I hope I didn't need him to really kind of, listen, compassion is great. It's not something that I was hoping that he would fill that void necessarily, because that would be unfair, and that's not really his role in my life or for any husband necessarily. But I definitely had discussions with my mom, years later. We had many clearings, many clearings, and most of them really were my own clearings within myself, of the way that I looked at things and the way that I saw things and my perspective. And there was a lot of forgiveness. There is not 1 ounce of me today that feels any anger or bitterness towards the way that I was raised or how my parents were. On the flip side, it's more just gratefulness. They did everything they could for us, everything. They sacrificed everything. And separate from that, I lived my life, and that was my story. And that story is now, that part of my story I kind of put it to bed, because I've become free from it, from that part of it. And as far as my ex-husband, well, my now ex, by the way, so I've been divorced 7 years. There were a whole slew of new things that arose with him. And the abandonment was one of them. But throughout my marriage, there were many struggles. And I'll just start in the beginning. Our marriage started out with a huge kind of bump in the road, I would say. 6 months into our marriage, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And, to his credit, he was there, but I guess he wasn't there as much as maybe I would have liked him to be, because once again, I go back to this. I had several surgeries, but my first surgery, maybe my second, he was there, and then he had to go to work. Like it's the type of thing where, again, I'm like, wait, am I needy? Like that I would want him to stay here with me for the day? Like I just had this major surgery. So these are the types of things that, I don't think that was needy. Like it's okay. Like that's okay. But he couldn't give it to me.
Absolutely.
Listen,
I think this is a great place to wrap up. But don't worry, everybody. We will continue the conversation with Lee in part 2 of this interview. Until then, if you have any questions. And if you like our videos, please like and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to let us know if you have any topic requests by commenting below, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.